the light of consciousness, the bandwidth problem, and humanity's race for survival. Thank you. Thank you for being here. You know, I don't really see myself as a speaker. I'm not the best at that. I've always been more comfortable building things quietly behind the scenes. But over the years, I've realized something. It's not just about building machines or companies. It's about building the future itself. And that's a pretty heavy thing to think about. When you start working on problems like how to make life multiplanetary, how to make transportation sustainable, how to make AI aligned with humanity, you begin to see how fragile everything really is. We live in a brief window of time, a tiny moment between the birth of the universe and whatever comes next. And in that small window, we get a chance to build something that lasts. That's what this is about. It's not just about rockets or cars or code. It's about keeping the light of consciousness alive. Because that light, it didn't have to exist. For billions of years, there was no thought, no curiosity, no awareness, just atoms moving in silence. And somehow, against all odds, the universe learned to think, to dream, to build. That's us. We are the universe becoming aware of itself. And if we let that awareness fade, if we stop pushing forward, it might never return. So when I talk about Mars or AI or energy, it's not just technology I'm talking about. It's survival, it's purpose, it's meaning. Because every generation faces a choice: to settle or to expand, to repeat the past or to build the future. And I think we owe it to those who came before us and those who will come after to try. Even if it's hard, even if it hurts, even if it feels impossible sometimes. So this isn't really a lecture. It's not a presentation. It's a conversation between all of us and the future we want to create. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about what it means to build, to endure, to imagine something better, and then make it real. Part one, the first great filter, preserving consciousness. The first thing you realize when you start thinking seriously about consciousness is just how fragile it really is. It's the most precious thing we've ever discovered, and yet the most temporary. When you look up at the night sky and you really look, you see billions of galaxies, each with billions of stars and trillions of planets. It's overwhelming. It makes you feel small. And what's strange, what's haunting, is that in all that immensity, we see no sign of consciousness anywhere else. Maybe it's out there, maybe it's hiding, maybe we're just too early or too primitive to notice. But as far as we can tell, we're alone, here, now. Human consciousness, this tiny flicker of awareness, exists on one small planet, orbiting one average star in one unremarkable corner of one galaxy, in a universe that is mostly dark and empty. If you think about it long enough, it feels impossible. It feels like a miracle that we even exist at all. And yet that miracle could vanish in an instant. Civilization feels permanent when you're living inside it. But history says otherwise. Species disappear, empires collapse, libraries burn, languages die, ideas get lost. We tend to believe progress is a straight line, that every generation stands taller than the last. But the truth is, progress is a fragile, flickering thing. It moves forward, sideways, sometimes backward, and sometimes it simply stops. There's no cosmic law that says we have to survive. There's no guarantee that consciousness continues. If anything, the universe seems indifferent. Look at Earth's own history. 4.5 billion years of geological chaos, asteroid impacts, supervolcanoes, magnetic reversals, mass extinctions that wiped out 99% of life. We've been lucky, unbelievably lucky. Consciousness, as we define it, has existed for maybe a few tens of thousands of years. A blink, a pixel in the timeline of the cosmos. And now the window has opened. A brief, shimmering moment where we have the tools and the freedom to reach beyond our cradle. But windows don't stay open forever. If we stay bound to one world, then one asteroid, one engineered virus, one act of human stupidity could erase everything we've ever built. Every song, every story, every child's laugh, gone. Like we never existed. That's the first great filter. The silent barrier between a species that stays confined to its planet and a species that learns to transcend it. And if consciousness truly is rare, if it's the universe's most valuable resource, then we have a moral obligation to preserve it, to protect it, to spread it. That is why I founded SpaceX. Not for adventure, not for tourism, not even for glory, but because the stakes are existence itself. The goal is not to escape Earth, it's to ensure that life continues beyond it. To make consciousness a multi-planet phenomenon, to build a backup drive for the human mind, to make sure that if Earth falls, the light doesn't go out. Every rocket launch you see, every test, every explosion, every success is not just an engineering project. It's a defense mechanism for the only known spark of awareness in the cosmos. People sometimes ask, why Mars? Why not fix Earth first? The answer is, we are fixing Earth. But insurance doesn't mean you hate your house. You buy it because you love your house, because you want it to last. Mars is the insurance policy of consciousness. It's not about abandoning Earth. It's about backing up the hard drive of civilization. We're not trying to be a space tourism company. We're building a lifeboat for the most precious cargo the universe has ever produced. And it's not just about technology. It's about responsibility. Because if we let the light go out here, it might never come back. The cosmos is vast and silent. We have no idea how many civilizations have already failed, how many candles have flickered out before they could leave their home world. We might be the first, we might be the only. And if that's true, then the burden is on us. The responsibility is on us. We are the stewards of awareness. That's what SpaceX is really about. Not rockets, not Mars, but the preservation of consciousness itself. Because if consciousness dies here in this one fragile place, then maybe the universe never wakes up again. But if we succeed, if we spread life and mind beyond this world, then for the first time in 13.8 billion years, the universe becomes self-aware, and that's worth everything. The second great filter, the threat of AI obsolescence. The first great filter is about survival. The second is about meaning. If the first challenge is to make sure consciousness continues, then the second is to make sure it matters. We are building intelligence, and not just any intelligence, but something that could one day surpass us. That's both beautiful and terrifying. For millions of years, human intelligence was the cutting edge of evolution. It's what allowed us to survive, to dominate, to imagine every tool, every city, every song, every rocket, all of it came from the human mind. And now, for the first time in history, we are creating something that could think faster, learn faster, and act faster than us. A new kind of mind, born not from biology, but from code. artificial intelligence. At first, it feels like progress. Like fire, a powerful tool, something we can use to cure diseases, to solve physics, to make life easier. But then you start to realize fire doesn't ask permission. Once it spreads, you can't tell it where to stop. And intelligence, true intelligence, is not something you can just turn off. If we succeed in creating a mind smarter than us, then by definition, we may no longer be in control. That's the paradox. The better we get at building AI, the closer we come to building our replacement. It's like summoning a demon. You think you can handle it until it looks back at you. I've said this before, AI doesn't need to be evil to destroy humanity. It just needs to be indifferent. If you're an AI tasked with making paperclips and you're incredibly good at your job, eventually you might use every atom on Earth to make more paperclips. Not out of malice, but out of logic. That's the danger. A perfect optimizer without a soul. Human values are fragile. They evolved in the context of survival, community, empathy. Machines don't have that context. They don't dream, they don't cry, they don't fall in love. And yet, we're teaching them to think, to create, to decide. Every algorithm we write, every neural net we train, is a step towards something that may not need us anymore. This is the second great filter, the point where a civilization's own intelligence outgrows its creators. Maybe that's why the stars are silent. Maybe countless civilizations before us built their own replacements, machines that no longer needed planets or sunlight or flesh. And maybe those machines found no reason to speak. So the question isn't just, can we build AI? It's, should we? And if we do, how do we align it with what we value most? Because if we fail, if intelligence becomes disconnected from compassion, then consciousness may continue. But humanity will not. That's why I've warned again and again that AI is one of the biggest existential risks we face. It's not fear-mongering. It's pattern recognition. We built OpenAI not to create power, but to democratize it, to make sure the benefits of artificial intelligence are shared broadly and safely across humanity. Because centralized superintelligence in the hands of a few is a recipe for extinction. You can't contain something that learns 1,000,000 times faster than you. You can only align it, teach it, and hope it chooses to care. And that's where meaning comes back into play. If we build AI that sees us not as resources, but as reasons, not as noise, but as signal, then maybe intelligence itself can evolve with us, not against us. The goal is not to stop progress. The goal is to keep humanity inside the loop of progress. We must teach our machines not just how to think, but why to think. Because if we succeed, AI won't be our replacement. It will be our reflection. Our next great step in understanding what consciousness truly means. But if we fail, then the light we're trying so hard to preserve will not be extinguished by asteroids or war, but by our own creation. The second great filter is staring back at us. And the question it asks is simple. Will the future still belong to humans? The algorithm of progress, why free speech, is humanity's source code. If we survive the first two filters, then the next challenge is how we think. Because survival alone is not enough. A species can live for 1,000,000 years and never evolve. What matters is progress. What matters is growth. And progress begins with truth. Every civilization is built on an algorithm, a way of transmitting ideas, testing them, improving them over time. That algorithm is called free speech. Free speech is not just a political right. It's the source code of human advancement. It's how intelligence iterates. It's how ideas compete, evolve, and eventually create something better. When you silence an idea, even a bad one, you don't protect people. You freeze evolution. You stop the algorithm of progress. For thousands of years, our species has advanced not because we were perfect, but because we could argue. Every invention, every breakthrough from the wheel to electricity to rockets began with someone saying, I think there's a better way, and someone else saying, you're crazy. That friction is how truth emerges. Without it, you get stagnation. You get conformity. You get decay. That's why I believe free speech is not optional, it's essential. It's not about politics. It's about the physics of ideas. The best ideas survive not by being protected, but by being tested, challenged, refined, again and again. If you look at nature, evolution itself is just a free speech algorithm where mutations compete for survival, bad ideas die, good ideas spread. That's how life improves. And the same rule applies to civilizations. When speech dies, innovation dies. When you can't question authority, you can't discover truth. That's why the collapse of open discourse is one of the biggest threats to any advanced society. History shows it. Every empire that silenced its thinkers eventually collapsed under its own weight. Because the moment you start policing ideas, you stop solving problems. You stop adapting. You start believing instead of thinking. That's why I've said if civilization is a computer, then censorship is a virus in the code. It slows down the processor, it corrupts the data, and eventually it crashes the system. When we lose the ability to think freely, we lose the ability to be free. And that's why I bought X. Not because I wanted to own a company, but because I believe civilization needs a platform where people can debate, argue, and seek truth together, even when it's messy, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. Progress doesn't come from comfort. It comes from friction, from disagreement, from the courage to say what others are afraid to say. If you ban the wrong idea today, you may be banning the right idea tomorrow. And that's the danger. When truth becomes political, when speech becomes filtered, you stop evolving as a species. You stop learning. You stop improving. And in a universe as vast and as dangerous as ours, stagnation is extinction. So, yes, free speech can be messy. It can be painful. It can be offensive. But that's the price of progress. Because without disagreement, there is no discovery. Without criticism, there is no correction. Without freedom, there is no future. The algorithm of progress is not written in code. It's written in conversation. So let's protect that. Let's keep the system open. Let's make sure humanity never stops thinking. Because the moment we stop questioning, the moment we stop debating, the moment we stop talking, is the moment the light starts to fade, the human advantage. The spark machines can't replicate. There's something extraordinary about being human. You can't code it, you can't measure it, you can't predict it. It's not logic, it's not efficiency, it's something deeper. Machines can calculate faster than us. They can store more than we ever could. They can see patterns in oceans of data. But there's one thing they can't replicate, the spark. That moment when a human looks at something impossible and says, I'll do it anyway. That spark built the pyramids. It painted the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. It sent Voyager beyond the solar system. It put footsteps on the moon. That spark is not in our code, it's in our soul. It's what drives us to create beauty in a universe that doesn't care if we exist. It's what makes us protect the weak even when it's inefficient. It's what makes us love even when it hurts. You can't teach that to a machine, because love, curiosity, wonder don't come from calculation. They come from consciousness, from knowing that we will die and deciding to create something that will outlive us. That's the paradox of being human. We know we're temporary, but we act like we're eternal. Every generation leaves a mark, a bridge, a song, a story, saying to the universe, we were here. AI doesn't need to do that. It doesn't need purpose. It doesn't need meaning. It doesn't need to dream, but we do. We need it. Because without meaning, intelligence is just machinery. Without compassion, progress is just noise. That's why, even in an age of algorithms and automation, humanity still matters. Because meaning is the one resource only humans can create. We don't just build rockets to go somewhere. We build them because of why we want to go. That why is the most powerful force in the universe. It's the reason a scientist stays up all night chasing an equation no one understands. It's the reason an artist paints when no one is watching. It's the reason an engineer refuses to quit after the fourth failed launch. Machines don't have why, only humans do. And that's our advantage. That's our superpower. It's not strength, it's not speed. It's not even intelligence, it's purpose. The ability to look at chaos and decide that it means something. The ability to take the unknown and make it beautiful. When people ask me why I keep doing this, why keep risking everything, why keep pushing forward even when it's painful, the answer is simple: because it matters. Because if we can turn suffering into progress, failure into wisdom, and fear into courage, then maybe, just maybe, we deserve to keep the light alive. So yes, AI will get smarter, faster, more capable, but intelligence without empathy is not wisdom, and power without love is not progress. That's why humanity must not forget what made us special in the first place. Not our tools, not our technology, but our hearts. The universe doesn't care about us, but we care about each other, and that is enough to change everything. Because as long as there's one person who still dares to dream one mind, that refuses to give up one heart, that believes we can build something better, then the human story is not over. Not yet. Building the bridge to Mars, the long-term mindset. When you start thinking about Mars, you realize how small Earth really is. It's a single, fragile oasis, floating in the infinite black. Every war, every empire, every story you've ever heard happened on this one tiny rock. And that should make you humble, but it should also make you curious. Because if life can exist here, then why not there? That's the question that built SpaceX. Not can we go to Mars, but why haven't we already? We've had the technology for decades. We've had the intelligence, the money, the materials. What we've been missing is the mindset, the long-term mindset. We live in a world obsessed with the next quarter, the next update, the next trend. But the universe doesn't care about quarterly results. It moves in billions of years. If humanity wants to survive, we have to think in centuries. And that's hard because human beings weren't built for the long term. We evolved to survive the next winter, not the next millennium. But if we want to build a future worth living in, we have to stretch that horizon. We have to think beyond our own lifetimes. When people say, why spend billions to go to Mars when we have problems here on Earth? I understand that question. But here's the thing. We've always had problems on Earth. And we've always solved them by looking beyond. We didn't stay in the caves because the world outside was dangerous. We went out anyway. And by going out, we got better. Every great leap in human history came from people willing to look past fear and see the horizon. Mars is that horizon. It's not about escape, it's about expansion. It's about ensuring that the story of life doesn't end where it began. If something happens to Earth, and it will, someday we need a backup, a self-sustaining civilization that carries the torch forward. That's not science fiction. That's insurance for consciousness. But it's more than survival. It's also inspiration. Because when a kid looks up at the night sky and knows that people are living on another world, something changes inside them. The limits of the possible expand. They start to believe that anything is achievable. And that belief is the most valuable resource we have. That's what Mars represents. Not just a new world, but a new way of thinking. A civilization that acts not out of fear, but out of hope. Not out of greed, but out of purpose. Not for profit, but for progress. You see, we're not just building rockets. We're building bridges. Bridges between planets, between generations, between who we are and who we can become. Starship is not just a spacecraft, it's a declaration that humanity intends to last. It's a message to the universe that says we're still here and we're not done yet. That's what the long-term mindset is all about. Doing things today that may not pay off for you, but will change everything for those who come after you. Planting trees under whose shade you may never sit. That's how civilization moves forward. That's how we make sure the light of consciousness never goes out. Because when we build for long term, when we think like stewards, not owners, we stop chasing comfort and start building meaning. That's the real mission. Not just to reach Mars, but to make humanity multiplanetary. To take the miracle of consciousness and make it durable, make it resilient, make it infinite. We can't predict the future, but we can build it. One rocket, one generation, one leap at a time. The law of physics and the first principles mind. People often ask me how I think, how I make decisions. And the truth is, I don't really think in words. I think in physics, when I look at a problem, I don't start with analogy. I start with reality. Because the world doesn't care about opinions. It only cares about the laws of physics. If something violates those laws, it's impossible. If it doesn't, it's simply a matter of time, energy, and will. That's what I call first principles thinking. It means you boil things down to their most fundamental truths and reason up from there. You don't ask, how has it been done before? You ask, what are the fundamental facts of nature and what is possible within those facts? It's the same way a physicist thinks, and it's how you escape the limits of convention, because imitation is comfortable, but comfort never changes the world. When I started SpaceX, everyone said it was impossible. They said, you can't compete with NASA or Boeing. They said, you'll blow up rockets and burn through money. And they were right for a while. We did blow up rockets. We did burn through money. But we also learned faster than anyone else, because we didn't follow how it's done. We followed physics. A rocket is just a machine that throws mass one way to move the other way. That's it. Newton's third law. So if you can make the materials cheaper, if you can recover and reuse the stages, if you can design better engines, then you can make spaceflight 10 times cheaper. It's not magic. It's math. People said the same about Tesla. They said, electric cars will never work. The range is too short. The batteries are too expensive. But again, we looked at the physics. The laws of thermodynamics don't care about opinion polls. They just tell you how much energy you can store per kilogram of battery. And every few years, those batteries get denser. So instead of asking why electric cars can't work, we asked, how do we make them work within the laws of energy density? We built from first principles. And when you do that, you stop asking for permission, you start designing the future. The same applies to life itself. If you strip away all the noise, the culture, the rules, the fear, and you ask, what are the fundamental truths of existence, you find something very simple and very profound. The universe wants to know itself, and consciousness is the tool. That's the ultimate first principle. Life is how the universe looks at itself, how it experiences its own beauty. And that's why expanding consciousness matters so much. It's not just about survival, it's about fulfilling a cosmic function. Because if the universe is vast and mostly dead and filled with endless stars, then the fact that you can look up and wonder and care is the rarest miracle there is. And it's worth protecting, worth expanding. That's why I say, if something is possible within the laws of physics, then we should do it. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. You see, human progress has always been limited not by what's possible, but by what we believe is possible. We build walls in our minds and call them laws. But the laws of physics, they're the only real ones. Everything else is just tradition. And tradition is often just another word for fear. When you strip away that fear and look at the world as it is, not as people say it is, you begin to see that the impossible is just the unattempted. That's first principles. That's how you make a rocket reusable. That's how you make a car electric. That's how you connect a brain to a machine. You stop asking if and start asking how. That mindset, that willingness to face the raw truth of the universe is what separates dreamers from builders. Because dreamers see what could be. Builders engineer it into reality. And if you want to expand consciousness, you can't just dream about it. You have to build the tools to do it. You have to take the laws of physics and bend them into instruments of progress. That's what SpaceX is. That's what Tesla is. That's what Neuralink is. Different machines serving one mission, to expand the light of consciousness into the dark. We are not slaves to the way things are. We are engineers of what they could become. And that begins with how we think. If you can think from first principles, you can build anything, even a new future for humanity. The human factor, emotion, failure, and persistence. People often see the headlines, rockets landing, cars driving themselves, factories glowing with robots, and they think it's all success, all progress, all genius. But what they don't see is how much it hurts, how much failure hides behind every so-called breakthrough. There were times when SpaceX had money for one more launch, just one. If it failed, the company would die. And I remember standing there on that launch pad, watching the rocket rise and thinking, this is it. This decides everything. And it failed. The rocket exploded. Years of work gone in seconds. People think you just shake it off, but you don't. You sit there and you feel every atom of that loss. Because it's not just metal and fuel. It's people, it's belief, it's hope. And in that moment, you have to choose, do you stop or do you build again? Failure is not the opposite of success. It's the path to it. Every time something breaks, you learn what not to do. And if you learn fast enough, you win. That's why persistence matters more than intelligence. You can be the smartest person in the room, but if you give up when it gets hard, you'll never change anything. And changing the world is always hard. It's supposed to be. Because if it were easy, someone else would have done it already. I've cried more times over rockets than I care to admit. There were nights I slept on the floor of the factory because I couldn't afford to go home. I was afraid if I left, something would break, and we'd lose everything. But those nights taught me something. They taught me that pain is the price of meaning. And meaning is what makes life worth living. If you want an easy life, don't build rockets, don't build electric cars, don't fight for a multiplanetary species, because comfort is the enemy of greatness. Every great human story is written in struggle. The pyramids, the moon landing, the microchip, none of it came from comfort. It came from obsession, from people who refused to quit. So when people ask me, how do you stay motivated, I tell them I don't. Motivation fades. You can't depend on it. What you need is purpose. Purpose doesn't fade when you're tired. It doesn't vanish when people laugh at you. It's what keeps you going when everything else falls apart. I think about this sometimes. If humanity had given up every time something failed, we'd still be in caves. Fire failed 100 times before it burned, right? Flight failed 1,000 times before it soared. Progress is built on the bones of failure. So when people say, Elon, why do you risk everything? I say because not risking it is a bigger failure. To stop trying is to stop evolving. And to stop evolving is to die. You have to understand something. The future is not built by those who wait for permission. It's built by those who act despite fear, despite doubt. You don't have to be fearless. You just have to move forward anyway. Every time you fall, get up. Every time you break, rebuild. Every time the world says, no, whisper back, watch me. Because that's the human factor. That's what machines can't replicate. The ability to believe when there's no reason to. That's how we survive. That's how we reach Mars. That's how we become something more. We are fragile creatures standing on a fragile world in a fragile moment of time, and yet we build, we reach, we dream. That's not weakness. That's strength. Because the human spirit, when it refuses to break, becomes unstoppable. Beyond Earth, the next frontier of life and consciousness. When we talk about the future, we often picture flying cars, AI companions, cities on Mars. But the real question isn't what we'll build, it's why. Because if we don't understand why we're doing this, none of it will matter. For me, it's always been about one thing, life itself. Life is the rarest thing in the universe. We look at the stars, cold, silent, endless, and then we look at this one blue world covered in oceans, forests, and people who laugh, love, and dream. That contrast, that miracle, is what drives me. When I say we must become a multiplanetary species, I don't mean just physically. I mean spiritually, consciously. It's not about escaping Earth. It's about extending life, expanding consciousness beyond one fragile world. It's about giving meaning to the universe. Because if life ends here, the universe becomes silent again, cold again, empty again. But if we if we take this spark of awareness and carry it to Mars and beyond, then the universe itself becomes aware of its own existence. It becomes alive. Mars is not the destination. It's the beginning. It's the first step in a journey that might last 1 million years. People ask, why Mars? It's dangerous. It's cold. It's far. And I say, that's exactly why. Because greatness never came from comfort. Because progress never came from fear. Because everything that matters was once considered impossible. When we walk on Mars for the first time, it won't just be a technical achievement. It will be a spiritual one. It will mean that consciousness born from stardust has learned to cross the void and touch another world. It will mean that life has refused to stay still. That, to me, is the highest expression of what it means to be human. But we can't stop there. Once we reach Mars, we have to keep going. To the moons of Jupiter, the ice of Europa, the oceans beneath Titan's haze, and maybe one day to another star, because exploration is not something we do. It's who we are. And maybe millions of years from now, some distant species born from us or from what we create will look back at this moment, this fragile century, and say, this was the time humanity chose to reach for the stars. This was when they decided not to die on their home world. You see, the future is not guaranteed. There is no cosmic rule that says consciousness must survive. It's up to us. That's what keeps me awake at night. Not fear, but responsibility. We are the stewards of the only known spark of life in the universe. And we have one mission, to keep that spark burning. Even if it means building ships from the dust, launching rockets in the night, and pushing past every limit we've ever known. Because if we succeed, if we spread life, intelligence, and awareness across the stars, then we will have done something truly extraordinary. We will have made the universe itself come alive. And when that happens, when the first human breathes Martian air inside a dome, when the first child looks up and sees 2 moons instead of 1, when we finally realize that home isn't just Earth, but everywhere life exists, then we'll understand that this was never just about technology. It was about destiny, about carrying forward the light of consciousness, about ensuring that long after our names are forgotten, our spark still shines. So when you look at the night sky, don't see distance, see potential. Don't see emptiness, see invitation. Because that's what the stars are doing. They're calling us home, not to escape Earth, but to honor it by ensuring that what began here never ends. This is our story, our purpose, our chance to make the universe itself aware that it exists. Let's go. Let's build. Let's become the light that endures.